Hello, this is Anna Malia from Northeast Animal Rights. So we have Doug Moore here, who is another one of our interviews for the series of Saturday Spotlight interviews we're doing at the moment with high-profile vegans and activists. This one, I've asked Doug to talk to us today about the link between Christianity and veganism. We know ourselves, I mean, we are practicing Christians, we know that there is a direct link, but obviously there's a lot of frustrations, and I kind of want to talk to Doug and explore Christianity and veganism a bit more generally. Okay, so Doug, if you're okay, I'm going to start with the questions now, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
So first of all, how long have you been both a practicing Christian and a vegan? Which of those do you find the harder to discuss with friends and family, and how do you deal with it?
Okay, well, they're both difficult in different contexts, but I turned vegan in 1996. I didn't find faith until 2015, so only 5 years as a practicing Christian, 24 as a vegan. I find probably the hardest context is expressing your faith within the vegan movement rather than the other way around. Yeah. Although I have some major problems within church of having people respect my views, but the abuse I get tends to be from vegans attacking Christians, which is a shame, because we all should be fighting together to try and, change. I want all Christians to become vegan. That's my that's what the way it should be. And a lot of Christians will bite back and say, well, you just get attacked by vegans who celebrate Satan as they make I love eating Satan, it's fantastic, but the way it's promoted and that name is hijacked, and puns are made which are actually highly offensive to a lot of Christians, and they find just some of the stuff you get when you say you're Christian, as well as, oh, do you believe in, I don't know, the spaghetti eating monster, all these nonsense things you hear within the vegan community. So I'd say it's probably harder in terms of dealing with abuse within the vegan community, but it's probably harder in terms of hitting a brick wall within the Christian community, trying to get them to go vegan.
Yeah. I think that actually compares quite similarly to what we do as well. What we get, we do find it difficult to discuss Christianity within the vegan context. I know in some conversations we've had sort of the conflict between how everybody, people go to church and they come home and they have roast dinners and everything. But the bottom line is, it's about people trying, isn't it? I mean, I suppose Christian vegans, it's probably a smaller number of Christian vegans than there are vegans and there are Christians. We've just got to make sure those numbers keep on increasing for the right reasons.
Yeah, and they are increasing.
Yeah, they are.
Definitely are, yeah.
And my husband and I are both Christian vegans, and we have the conflict of going to church, knowing that obviously those in the church community will mostly come back to a roast dinner consisting of a dead animal. They're kind of like, we're going and listen to sermons about peace and love and kindness and love your neighbour and look after everyone, look after all creatures. So they do that, but we try to be good role models. We answer questions with humour. We kind of try not to take offence and give them facts. And obviously this is all pre-COVID, because obviously it's very different going to church now. We do things like providing cakes for fairs, and we left information on the tables. We used John Ryder's pamphlet from the Christian Vegan Society, and they're really good because they have all the paragraphs and everything in. The passages which are the ones which actually say that veganism is the right path. So how do you go about yourself? How do you promote veganism in your own church?
Well, at the moment I don't attend a church, and and that's primarily because of the whole veganism thing, because from 2015 forward, apart from a short time in Keswick, I was attending the same church down in West Sussex, and I love the people. They're like family, and I've talked to lots of them. In fact, some of them have they do Daniel fasts and they become vegetarian, and one or two have become vegan, but they won't say it. And they certainly won't tell the pastor, and they won't express their veganism. But the final straw for me with that church was that during the Amazon fires last year, and it was all over the news what was causing it. We all know it was animal agriculture responsible for burning it. What did my church do after I'd had meetings with the pastor to try and explain why I had incredible difficulty with them giving away bacon butties to children and stuff like that? They decided to have a barbecue right in the midst of the Amazon fires, and I just, in all conscience, couldn't stick with it anymore. I'm still in touch with lots of people from that church, but I'm now more closely aligned with the Seventh-day Adventists, just because their views are a lot more similar to mine in terms of what true expressions of the Holy Spirit really are. I don't think you can claim to expound the fruits of the Spirit while having barbecues while the world's on. It's basically throwing fuel on the fire. Yeah, it is. And so in that respect, I'm not the right person to ask how I'm dealing with it in my church at the minute, because I left, and the church has lost a lot of people for similar reasons, which is sad, because they should be embracing it. Like I said, I've made some good friends through that church, and some of them are vegan, although they won't call themselves vegan, which is frustrating. But I'm just glad they've taken that step.
Yeah, I think the barbecue thing it's kind of like it's almost like, somebody says, would you like to have a cup of tea, sort of thing. Somebody comes around for a cup of tea. It's the normalizing of behaviours. We had this lovely vicar before, and he's left now, but he was lovely. He was a Franciscan, and he was very kind and gentle. He knew I was vegan. He wasn't. My husband's vegan, but it was always kind of like at the end of the day, it's a lovely day for a barbecue. And he's like, right, okay, could he not have just...
So frustrating, but but the worst thing is they'll have an event. Churches generally will have an event, and they'll hand out sausage, bacon to kids. I tried explaining to the pastor, because I'm a dietitian, that's what I do now, that in a couple of years' time, people are going to be coming back and suing them. It is like handing out cigarettes to children or alcohol to children. You just don't do it. So why are they doing this? And they just don't get it. Oh, we're never going to become a vegan church. We're a farming community. It's irrelevant. You don't have to become a vegan church. You just have to reflect as best you can Christian
values. Yeah. My husband says that the church is obviously such an old organisation, so change takes quite a long time. For example, women priests. So do you agree that the church will eventually move in the right direction towards veganism, but just going to take longer than the rest of society?
I think the church almost needs to go kicking and screaming when it changes. Look at women priests. It was sad. And some churches are embracing different ways of doing things, because you can hold values that go back thousands of years, but doesn't mean you have to act the way we did thousands of years ago. And I think people understanding that if they want to engage with people who are living in this century and this time now, they've got to talk to those people on this level. Fortunately, lots of churches are starting to do that, and we're seeing a growth of vegan-friendly services, particularly maybe only once a year, but you'll see a lot of churches will do an animal service, and the Catholic Church are even doing that. So, there is definite signs of change, but it is slow, and I think it will probably take people taking, a bit like I said, with someone suing them for giving their kids cancer, or it will take something like that to make the body of the church change.
When we do outreach in Newcastle, we'll have stalls up there, and we do it most weekends. We're also side by side with speakers who are on soapboxes, literally sort of professing to be Christians and proclaiming that God loves us. And then we obviously have conversations with them saying, well, obviously you believe in peace, love and kindness, so you must be vegan. and then they use variables on the same argument. You know, God put animals on earth for us to eat. So what's your sort of like your quick response to those sorts of, because you're not going to have in-depth conversations with them. So what's your quick response to those sorts of people?
Well, firstly, I'll listen, because quite often there's anger or there's frustration, just like anyone. When someone challenges their beliefs and behaviours, they feel threatened. So I listen and see what it is and try and find some common ground. And if there is some, then you leap on it. But the go-to passages, I guess, are the obvious ones. Genesis 1:29, which is, I think it's the second instruction in the whole of the Bible, and before the Ten Commandments, instructing us how to eat. And if God didn't want us to be vegan, then why did he instruct us to before anything else? So that's number one. But as a Christian, not a Jew, I follow Christ, and therefore I look to his prayer. So it's Matthew 6:9-13, the Lord's Prayer. And what is he telling us? He's telling us that we need to pray for earth as it is in heaven. So what does he mean by that? We look at scripture like Isaiah 65, Isaiah 11, descriptions of heaven, where the wolf's lying with the lion's lying with the lamb, the wolf with the baby. You know, and it's not just Isaiah. A lot of the prophets describe heaven in the same way. If you look at Ezekiel or Hosea, they say the same thing. And so when Jesus is talking about trying to bring earth as it is in heaven, and heaven is vegan, God's two perfect creations, Eden was vegan, his other perfect creation, heaven, is vegan. What is it that people are missing here? It's pretty obvious. And so they're the three go-to scriptures that I use to engage with Christians, usually, rather than the other way around, engaging with non-Christians. None of them are my favourite scripture, by the way, but I don't know if you're going to ask about that later. So,
well, do you want to jump in and tell me about those now then? Your favourite one?
Well, I can do, if you don't mind me grabbing my Bible.
Go on, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's Ecclesiastes 3:18-20, and let me get to the passage. I said in my heart concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them that they may see that they themselves are like animals. What happens to sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they have all one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. If that doesn't tell you what God thinks of all animals, including humans, and I get really frustrated with people when they say when they separate humans from animals. We're not minerals, we're not vegetables, we're animals. So that passage for me, just clear as a bell, tells you what God thinks of all his creation, animal wise, and that includes us.
I think that's a really interesting passage. I mean, it's not one I've read before, but I wonder if it'd be useful for the viewers if we the ones you've already mentioned, and the Genesis ones as well. Obviously, I've got those from the leaflet. If we maybe put some of those on so people can actually see, sort of see where the instructions are coming from, and see where the the kind of the guidance and everything. I think that would be really, really helpful for people who are kind of still they're wanting a bit more information about why we think that it's the obvious thing to be is, if you're a Christian, you should be vegan as well. So I think I might put those on later on. I think that's
okay. Well, the Isaiah ones, I don't know if they're on the leaflet you've got. It's 65:25 and 11:6-7.
Right. Okay then, mate. I'll have a look at the leaflet and I'll just compare it. But if I haven't, I'll get those I'll get those typed up and put them on the page as well, because I think that'll be really helpful. It'll be helpful to me as well. I'll learn those ones all off by heart. So kind of like going back a little bit as well with I mean, this is another one we had yesterday as well, funny enough, what about Jesus feeding the fish to the thousands? So Jesus ate fish. Do you think he would be vegan if he was alive now?
Well, there's two things there. Jesus feeding fish to 5,000. He didn't. Go back and read it. He didn't. And Jesus ate fish. Did you say that?
Didn't.
There's only one instance in the whole Bible, and that's in John, where it describes Jesus cooking fish, and that's after he's died. Nowhere in the Bible does it describe Jesus eating flesh of any kind whatsoever. I'm not saying he did or didn't. Just saying there is no evidence anywhere in the Bible that says that Jesus ate any animal, including fish, at least until after he was died, to try and prove that he was alive to the apostles. And that was only on one instance, on one account of the four. So, you know, but even if he did, if we, because lots of people won't accept that. I've heard people say that the language is an issue. So the word for fish and the word for fish paste and delicacies from the sea are interchangeable. But let's dismiss all that. Let's suppose for a moment, although I don't, but let's suppose for a moment that Jesus ate fish. Why does that mean that in 2020 we need to eat what someone was eating 2,000 years ago? Are they saying that Jesus' behaviours in 2,000 years ago were normative? Because if they're saying that, the people saying that need to be doing everything that Jesus was doing then, and wearing what he was wearing, getting about the way he was getting about. It is not normative. If Jesus could have, he would have used the internet. If Jesus could have, he would have. He wouldn't choose to harm. And another, that's the key thing for me. If it doesn't come from love, it's not from God. It's noise. So if you're checking scripture and you think it doesn't come from a place of love, then I'm saying that is not from God. That is from humans who have imposed that in their writing. It's not from God. And to the literalists who say, you can't say that's sacrilege, everything in the Bible is the word of God. If that's the case, why are there contradictions in the Bible? We cannot take the Bible literally. If we take it literally, then we have to embrace the contradictions, and that just wouldn't make sense. Luke and Acts contradict each other no end of times. Which is right. Maybe we're just not supposed to take it literally. We're supposed to take it as a lesson. So if eating the fish or feeding the 5,000 was a lesson in how we how we should behave towards people in need, or the power of what God can do, and it doesn't mean that we should take literally what's in there. So, but as I said, even if he did eat fish, which I don't accept, if he did, we shouldn't accept that everything that was done 2,000 years ago is what we do now. We're not roaming the Holy Land as being hunted, because from his birth Jesus had a death penalty. So we're not being hunted and having to rely on whatever we can eat because we're living a peripatetic lifestyle. We can go to the shops, we can buy stuff. We're in a totally different position. So I don't accept that it's normative. But moreover, I don't accept that he did. And those people who say he fed the 5,000, I encourage them to go back and read the passage, because he didn't. They broke the bread and fed it to the people. They didn't. There's no mention of the fish. They brought him bread and fish. He broke the bread and fed the people. What happened to the fish?
I mean, more simplistically for me, I think that I look at Jesus as a personification of peace and love. He's not going to do something which is going to hurt something which can clearly feel pain. So to me, that regardless of whether he ate it 2,000 years ago, like you said, 2,000 years ago, times have changed. It's much more. Vegan food is much more accessible. I mean, it probably was pretty accessible then, to be honest, because it was much cheaper. It was much more available. But I don't think that if he was alive today, he would definitely be vegan, because it's just fundamental. I've always said
Exactly, and
love. Yeah.
and surely Christians believe that Jesus was able to perform miracles, and God can do anything. If God was to present fish in the form of food, why would he do it via painful death? Like, surely he could present something that looked like fish, or that he could create it like that as a dead animal, as something a bit like he did with the quail in the desert. And what happened to them? The people who ate the quail, they groaned that they groaned because they were given bread, manna. They wanted flesh, and what happened? They died. He was angry with them. They rebelled in the same way that Noah rebelled, and people asked for flesh after the flood. He gave them very specific instruction of what they could and couldn't eat, but it didn't mean he was happy with it. It was a concession, a temporary concession, and a very restrictive one that people forget. You don't see Christians going around taking out the parts of the diet that he specifically said you couldn't eat and not eating that, do you? Because they're cherry picking.
You're dead right. We know that men at the moment are less likely to be vegan than women. So why do you personally think this is the case? And what angle would you use to convert men to veganism? Or do you disagree with that?
No, I accept it. It's true, and it's quite sad when I go to vegan events and most of the main speakers are men. Because the vast majority of vegans are women. So it's great to see a woman doing what you're doing and shining a light on veganism and in all kinds of aspects that you're doing. And most of my heroes in the vegan movement are women. So, it frustrates me slightly that men are pushier and tend to get more headlines and limelight, but it's no doubt true that men are less inclined. It's difficult to explain within the vegan community as well, because vegans are generally very liberal, very as am I, but very modernistic, I guess. We don't accept historical roles and rules, and that's great, because we shouldn't, because they're restrictive. However, most men, especially most men in my generation would have been brought up, you've got to be a man, you do man things, you hold doors open for ladies, you lift things, you do physical work, you've got to be strong. All that, I know, hearing that within a vegan community makes people laugh, or go, what planet are you from? But that's the reality of men. Men are brought up like that, and until we address that, we're not going to convince them. So the best way of getting men is to take them at that level. So get in the gyms, get in the sports stadiums, get in these places and show them examples. People like Lewis Hamilton are fantastic what he's doing. He did it purely for health reasons at the start. Now look at him. He's now it just goes. So when what I'll call vegan snobs, people like me who did it because I love animals, a lot of them will say, well, you're not a vegan if you don't do it for the animals. You can be, this and the. It slightly irks me, because the amount of people who went vegan for their health, who are now incredible activists, or went vegan for the environment and are now incredible activists, and who, it's like you said, as a Christian in your church, you want to be an example. Surely as vegans we want to be an example. So go into the gyms, show them you can be strong. Not everyone has to do that, but there's a place for people like Paul Curtin, hence Herbivore, people like Patrick Babumian, people like Fraser Bailey, Neem Delgado. These guys are proving that you can be those traditional macho types.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton, Hector Bellerin, lots of people in sport, I name loads of them who are vegan, who are now changing. And the tradition within that male environment is anti-vegan because it's like eat meat. When I started playing rugby as a little boy, after the match you were given hot dogs or burgers or whatever. It was a macho environment, and you got, and macho includes barbecues, meat, all that nonsense I was talking about with the church. That same thing is prevalent throughout sport. And if you go to a sport club, I know as a dietitian who's taught to sports teams, they hide what they're eating if they're vegan, because they don't want to upset their coaches who've got nutritionists, not even dietitians, nutritionists. They should not be telling sports people what to eat. These people have learned nutrition in the 1970s and 80s and haven't learned, and they haven't kept up with the industry and with facts and science. So when they're giving, when you find a vegan footballer, for example, you find, and you talk to them. I know a rugby player. He still does hide his food, scrape out the chicken and eat the rest. Whereas he shouldn't have to do that. He should be given a vegan option. But and that's at a massive club. So, you know, if that's how people are feeling, that's why it needs challenging, and that's why you need male role models who are this macho or sports type image. Because I don't know any mates who I see around town who are outside of the vegan community who don't respond to that kind of message. They certainly don't respond to if I'm doing a save or if I'm doing a AV event, they're not going to engage. They're not, them men, that kind of man is not going to engage with it unless there's another trigger for them there. They will respond to role models.
Yeah, we have a really good activist in our group called Kevin, and he's just kind of the sort of person you describe. And he actually he watched Game Changers, and he watched it being really, really cynical, thinking that he wanted to disprove it. That was a lot of nonsense. So he watched it, was absolutely fascinated and horrified in equal measures. Then he went out and researched it because he thought it was probably all propaganda and couldn't find anything to disprove what was being said, and converted to plant-based overnight. But he did it.
I think some of the Game Changers is great, and one of the best things that happened was when Joe Rogan interviewed someone to disprove it, take it apart. The guy he got on to do it hadn't got a clue what he was talking about once he was challenged. So you got on I can't remember the guy's name, the martial artist who did the Game Changers. They got him on to discuss it with the chap who debunked it, and he just pulled him apart. The science is on our side, and so if people want to get stronger, want to recover quicker, want to still be competing at an older age. I'm 51 now, and I'm still running ultra marathons. I couldn't even run 100 meters 6 years ago. You know, we are capable of so much, and by going vegan we give ourselves that much more chance. I'm not going to say all vegans need to do that, because not everyone wants to, and some people are happy just by, I'd say just by, it's a massive thing, just by not contributing to harm and cruelty, which is great. But I think you're a better example if you can show those people who we're not reaching that they can improve. And that's why I'm all for the health and fitness industry embracing veganism.
So you mentioned the SAVE and AV. So what type of activism appeals to you, and which do you think is the most effective?
Well, it's funny. You're from the Northeast. The nicest group I ever have been involved with were from Newcastle area. Northeast Animal Save, fantastic people. I absolutely love them. They embraced me. I had a history before I became vegan. I worked in abattoirs. I was a butcher. I managed a farm. So I'm proof that they're not wasting their breath. And they could have responded to me in a different way, quite negatively, but they embraced me and they were fantastic. They involved me, went out socializing with them. So I loved them. And I also learned a lot from them. There was a guy called Connor, and
Connor,
him and a couple of him and Leslie, and Connor and a couple of others were going out doing this activism where they were setting up in the Newcastle Centre,
doing the
giving away food,
the vegan cookout,
And I've seen people do that elsewhere since. I'd never seen that before. That is fantastic, because I don't the people, you have to break down boundaries. People skip past it in the supermarket aisle thinking, that's vegan, I'm not going to like that. And then when they actually taste it and see, this is bloody good. And so people like Connor and the stuff they're doing, I think that's amazing. So that, for me, that's as important as confronting the people who are actually doing the harm and doing the job that I used to do. And one thing I can't do, I used to be a hunt saboteur, but my that's one thing that just winds me up so much. I couldn't do it because I think I'd end up in serious trouble if I did that. I just can't stand the people who hunt. So I have to distance myself from that. So we choose what form of activism suits us. That those who go out and do that, brilliant. I couldn't do it anymore. Because I'd want to drag them off their horses and give them a good shoeing, and that's not the way to do it. But other people wouldn't want to do some of the things I did, but for different reasons. One of the nicest forms of activism I saw, and it was two little old ladies sitting in Cat's Kitchen in Keswick, wearing vegan slogans on their T-shirt, and someone else was talking about it, and I thought, that what them little old ladies have done. They've got people talking about it, and they didn't have to shout at people on horses, or they didn't have to do any of that. They were just wearing a slogan that's quite subtle. I can't remember exactly what it was. I remember it being fairly subtle, though it wasn't graphic or anything. And people started talking, and I just thought, that's fantastic. I just sat there and soaked it all in, thinking, this is amazing. Watching, you're literally watching the world change. And the other one is Neem Delgado calls it attractivism. So if we can do things that attract people to veganism by being nice, handing out food, encouraging people to join us, and doing things, building them up. Say someone wants to run and involving them. I run a vegan runners club in Bognor Regis, and we don't just have vegans, we have non-vegans come along, and we have rules which mean they can't bring anything non-vegan or talk about but the amount of people in that group who are eating vegan and sharing pictures of vegan, I call it, I like Neem's term, attractivism. I think if you can make something attractive, then people will embrace it. And that doesn't just mean aesthetically, it means, holistically.
I think it is, you're right, it's about being good role models, and I've never been attracted to the form of activism where you're kind of like shouting at people, showing them graphic stuff. I think graphic stuff does work, on occasions. I mean, it certainly worked for me, but kind of, I think in the main, our group is more about peace and love, kind of like laid back, trying to get people to talk to them, The food one goes down great, but obviously at the moment we can't do food. Every time we've done food in the past with different groups, we've had queues of people waiting to try all the food, but it is, but we've got people in our group who are professional cooks, they have some of them have their own companies, and we're dying to get out and about so we can actually do food, because guaranteed when we do food, that's the one where you get most people talking about veganism.
And people will let their kids eat it, won't they?
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to get kids, whereas a lot of people hold their kids back from watching an AV, or
Exactly, it is, yeah, yeah. So what's next for you then? You're always busy running around doing all sorts of things. So what are you up to now?
Yeah, I'm just developing my website for my dietitian business. So that's been on hold during lockdown because I didn't qualify for government support. So I've been doing all sorts of jobs to get me through. But do you know what? It's been okay. I've done okay. So I'm now in a position to be able to afford to do the website development. And I just continue to hope that I can encourage people of faith to embrace a more loving and compassionate way of life through not just what they eat, but through all their choices. And similarly, I'd encourage vegans not to write off people of faith. When you joke and jest about them, you hurt them. Now it's that might seem funny to some people, but and as Christian, we're told to turn the other cheek, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we're human. We react, which is why occasionally you'll get the negative reactions on a outreach stall. But remember, they're people. Remember, they're just like you before you were vegan, except in some cases, if you have never had faith, they have faith. It doesn't mean they're stupid. There are plenty of very intelligent people with faith. You don't have to literally accept every word of the Bible to be a Christian. I'm proof of that. Some people do, and I don't judge them. I think their approach is very different to mine, and nor would I say I'm better or worse than someone who calls himself an atheist or an agnostic, because I'm not. I just had an experience that made me believe in God. I don't believe you can explain faith. I don't believe it's something you can debate, because it's not scientific. It's not rational. It's an experience. And so if people want to call me names for believing that, that's fine. I can take that, because I'm comfortable. At 51 years old, I'm finally comfortable in my skin. It took me a long time. Going vegan was a massive step in that, but it was nowhere near enough. I'd say there are probably 3 or 4 major life decisions I've made that have got me to where I am. Going vegan, finding faith, giving up alcohol being the 3 primary ones for me. Everyone's got their own thing, but for me, that if I hadn't done those 3 things, I wouldn't be who I am today. I'd be probably struggling and continuing with mental health issues and whatever other issues I had, which caused me to behave in the way I did.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today. I mean, you know, what I would encourage people to do when they watch this interview is to follow you on Facebook, because I find obviously the passages and things you put on to be really, really inspiring, and it also kind of it does do a lot to debunk the myths which people come up with, you know, about Christianity. I think like the passages you're choosing are really, really, really good.
Yeah, I'm not shy about choosing difficult ones. I could just choose the ones that we mentioned above, but I've particularly picked out ones on feeding the 5,000, and I've picked out ones on the Gadarene swine. Some of the most difficult passages for vegans, I've picked them out and analysed them, because I think it's important. It's not just scripture. I'll occasionally do a quote that I consider Christian that isn't from the Bible, but so it's not that. But if people can't be bothered with the Facebook thing, I also do it on Instagram. I share the same post, because that's less. I'm quite prolific on Facebook, and some people might find that a bit much. So they can follow me on Instagram as well.
Yeah, well, we are trying to, at the moment, we are kind of trying to get on top of the Facebook stuff, because obviously we're doing posts every day on different topics and everything, but we will be getting Instagram as well, so we'll be following you as soon as we get set up.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your time today. It's really, really appreciated.
You're welcome.
And I know it'll be it'll be very welcome, and it'll be very well received. But I'll sign off for now, and I'll say from North East Animal Rights, thank you very much, Doug Moore, for your time today, and good luck with everything you do in the future as well.
Thank you.